Hello, all, and welcome to our first ever News Desk podcast. You may know our names as the small text underneath headlines, so to put face to names, we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. I'm Emma. I've been at the Eagle for about a year now, and I cover City Council and more.
And I'm Joe Southern. I've been at the Eagle for about 2 months. I've been in the business for over 30 years, and here at the Eagle, I cover just a variety of everything.
And I'm Stephen Whitaker. I came to the Eagle in September from San Antonio, where I graduated from UTSA many years ago, and then went and worked for many publications there. Since coming to the Eagle, I have covered a little bit of everything from President Welsh getting invested as president to civic events and just about everything.
I might have been at the Eagle the longest, but they've been in journalism longer than I could ever. Yeah, so definitely this week has seen national events that will likely be written in history textbooks for years to come, assuming kids are still reading textbooks in the near future. But we want to focus in on the local element because we've seen some interesting races on all sides. Now, one of the big races that we've seen in College Station is between Scott Schaefer and Trey Watson, where truly they had managed to split the vote 50-50, which I think was probably the closest race we've ever seen in the county. Both Trey Watson and Scott Schaefer have plenty of experience behind them, and I think Trey Watson especially has been an advocate for neighborhood integrity, which has been a very large issue in College Station City Council. Mm-hmm. And not to mention Scott Schaefer works for Texas A&M. And oftentimes a lot of these candidates have brought up the issue that they want Texas A&M to come to the table a lot more when it comes to like these housing issues and things, because Texas A&M hasn't built a new dorm in a very long time, and we just found out that they are not going to be able to sustain themselves over the multiple years if they keep bringing in more students, especially in the neighborhoods. You know, you can only put so many of them in beds on campus, so those who come into Texas A&M to take these classes are going to find housing somewhere else in the city, and that oftentimes means very upset residents. And you know, there is still a chance that Watson could pull through, even though Scott Schaefer does have a bit of a lower than 1% advantage over the other. There's about, I would say, under 300 votes between the two of them that separate them. So they have about, I would say, 450 provisionals and 700 absentee and military ballots that are not counted yet. So we may yet see a major upset in this position. Otherwise, we also saw the election of Melissa McElhaney, and I hope I'm saying that correctly, and David White, both of whom have plenty of experience in city council, and so I'm sure they'll bring a lot of great experience and, you know, background to that table. As for Brian, we'll be getting another 4 year of the same incumbents. And that is to be expected. All of them have some wonderful experience as well. And, you know, Bryan City Council has seen a lot of popular decisions recently, like including the Bombers and Bryan, where they did manage to negotiate that deal and they figured out common ground for everything. So seems like the Bombers will be sticking around. And, you know, that was a lot of upset citizens at that meeting when they were discussing it. A lot of people trying to defend the Bombers there. So ultimately, not a surprising role. You know, I think all of these candidates will be able to do the best job they can. Yeah. So tell us a bit more about what you got going on, Stephen.
Well, I covered the Texas House of Representatives races for districts 12 and 14. Brazos County is interesting in that it has 2 congressional districts. District 14 covers Bryan, College Station, and Curtin, and then the rest of the county is in District 12. And in both cases, the districts were going to be electing a new person this year, as the incumbent in both districts decided not to run this year. In District 12, it was Kyle Casal, and in District 14, it was John Rainey, who both of them had served their respective districts for over a decade, and then they decided not to run this year. Both of them were Republicans, so the people might have changed, but the party didn't, because the Republican Party did win both seats. In District 12, Trey Wharton beat his Democratic challenger, D. Howard Mullins, but with, I think, 76% of the vote. And then in District 14, it was a little closer, but Paul Dyson won with 61% of the vote over Fred Medina. Both Wharton and Mullins are from Huntsville and very active down there. Dyson and Medina are both Bryan residents, and both are pretty active in the community up here. And then Dyson actually was friends with John Rainey's youngest daughter. They were in high school together. So they had at his party on Tuesday, they had a moment of when he found out he had won. And so he and John Rainey got kind of like a passing the torch moment. They both, Wharton and Dyson, are supporters of the Greg Abbott school voucher plan, but they both also want to see the public schools continue to be funded, and they want raises for teachers. And when I talked to both of them this week, they're both excited about getting to Austin and learning as much as they can before the session starts, and then also in session itself.
Nothing like a local election to really remind you that it's a small world after all, huh?
Yep.
It's interesting how interconnected a lot of these candidates are with each other, especially in the community. Yeah, for sure. And tell us, Joe, I understand there were some interesting decisions being made on some of these prospects. On what are they called again?
The propositions.
The propositions,
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was very interesting because both propositions passed with over 70% of the vote. And they both had to do with fencing and livestock. One was specifically for cattle, one was for horses, donkeys, and the like. And then after they passed, the county judge, Dwayne Peters, put a halt to them being implemented because a couple of problems came up that they were unaware of. First of all, when the county was doing the orders to put these on the ballot, they were supposed to do two orders. They were the same wording. One was signed by the commissioners, one was signed by the judge, but only one paper went forward, and all of them signed the same paper. So that really wasn't a big deal. It's not a deal killer there. But what really got interesting was when they dug into the state's stock laws. And when you're voting on things that are related to stock, only freeholders, which is property owners who are also registered voters, can vote. And nobody was aware of that at the time. So what happened is everybody who was a registered voter could vote on it, and they did. And now they're kind of in this quandary because they passed so overwhelmingly, but improperly. So right now, the county attorney is taking it to the Attorney General's office for an opinion to see if these will hold or if they have to start over from scratch. So if they do, then you go all the way back to having to petition to get them on the ballot and go through the whole thing again.
For sure. It'll be interesting to see especially how this affects local farmers if and when they decide they're going to go ahead and begin enforcing it.
Right. And I don't know of anybody in the county who still free ranges their cattle. It doesn't make any sense to me. But, the law is the law. So,
the only time my family has ever had to call 911 is because we were driving down Highway 6 and we saw a cow right off the side. And, this is kind of a busier section of Highway 6. So, my mom's like, well, we got to tell 911 about it. And I always remember that. I was like, I guess that cow could have genuinely hurt someone if it had just wandered onto Highway 6. I mean, you hear about deer killing people all the time on roads. I can't imagine hitting a brick wall that is a cow.
Well, and I did the story, or one of the stories on this earlier, and part of it is, so state highways, even if your county is an open range county, state and federal highways are considered closed range. So any animal that gets out onto those and then gets hit by a car, the owner of that animal is responsible for any damages. And what I get from reading the law and the history of it, the open range and closed debate has been going on in Texas since we were an independent republic. And the idea is that if you're a rancher, it's in an open range county, it's not your responsibility to put up a fence. It's your neighbors to keep their own land fenced off so your animal can't get onto their land. And so then in an open range county, any damage the animal does becomes the responsibility of whoever's land the damage was done on, or whichever vehicle the damage was done on. In a closed range county, which there are over 150 of them in the state, So half the state is thinking, maybe we'll not have the cow roaming free. In those closed range, the responsibility for fencing falls on the rancher, and if the cow gets out without their knowing, so like if the guy just is negligent in his fences and lets Bessie run free, then he's responsible. But if he can prove that he didn't know the cow had gotten out, there's still some leeway of where they might not be able to say it was his fault that Bessie roamed free and county roads and FM roads, if they're in an open county, are also considered open range. So,
and if we get to that point, Bessie is probably a cheesesteak.
Probably. Or chicken fried.
Or chicken fried, gosh.
Yeah, I live out in the county, way out down Elmo Whedon, and frequently we're having to drive around cows that have escaped their fences. So even if a fence is up, they're still going to get out. Yeah. It happens.
Oh yeah, in the same way dogs get out when you leave a door open. I imagine it's also, I can't imagine what it's like leading a cow back, someplace. Got to get the whole trailer back, Yeah.
When I was a kid growing up, we had a couple cows, and they were pinned in by electric fences, and every time the power went out, we were chasing our cows through the neighborhood.
I can imagine. It'll be interesting how this progresses in the future as well, and we'll keep an eye on it. So with that being said, there's definitely a lot to take away from this year's election, but only time will tell how those results will shape our communities. Until next time, this is your Eagle News team, and thank you for listening.
Have a good day.